What is up, artists? All right. I was gone last week. I said I had like all these videos to put out, and then I disappear. Last week, I was chaperoning my son's class trip down to Washington, D.C. We were gone for 5 days. I had over 80 eighth graders to watch over doing the D.C. experience. Needless to say, I did not have time to make any videos. I'm sorry. It was a great time though, and I did get to see some art down there and practice my hand at doing a little liminal space photography. I'm going to share that on the Discord. I think you guys might get a kick out of it since we just talked last week. Oh, the last video we talked about. Since then, the back rooms was discovered where it is. It happened like a couple days after I put that video out. Who would have known? Like, what a coincidence. I can't believe it. But liminal spaces and backroom, check that stuff out. It was great internet lore, and it's in a way, it's a little sad that it was discovered. Anyway, this week we are going to camp. We are going to pull out some summer aesthetics. Summer camp aesthetics. All right, let's get into it. Oh, you guys got it. You got it. All right. So, this first art style that I threw in there is shadow puppets. And God, her hand is just like creeping me out here. There's some AI hand. I don't know what she's doing. I don't know. It's creepy. She's making some cool puppet. Anyway, shadow puppets. Let's check this out. We get we're going to get some good silhouetted looks, and interesting play with shadows. Kind of put more of the focus on the shadow. Definitely throw this into a more complex prompt and see what you get. Here's the woman. Here's a burger. I mean, this is cool because it's, the cast shadow of the burger really makes that or cheeseburger. They forgot to put the cheese on it. Man, they always get the drive-through. Anyway, now the shadow is very prominent in this. So pretty cool. Here is a forest, and this has got that diorama type feel to it with volumetric lighting behind it. Really loving it. Really fantastical feel. Same thing with the house. Very cool, volumetric. I love this like kind of, what do you call it? It's almost like a naive art form or a primitive art form, paper cutting, where it's not super exact and precise. It's not trying to just shrink down a real house. It's trying to characterize it as it's shrunk down. And the lighting with the shadowing, phenomenal. Motorcycle, very cool, backlit. And we're getting shadow play. This shadow puppet, it just brings shadows to the subject. I love this one. This one is cool because you kind of get that sheet. And, if you were doing shadow puppets in camp when you were back in the 70s, they probably would have a sheet up with a projector. They would have used one of those old carousel projectors, probably for 35 millimeter slides. The skulls are creepy anyway, but now, it's really making sure that it captures the shadow of it. And a tree. This is cool because the tree is on the other side of, God, I need some water. Did I bring any water? Tree is on the other side of this sheet or canvas and being lit from that side. So we're just dealing with the shadow in this one. Very neat, very cool. I love how, the focus and the literal focus, like how sharp it is, down at the trunk is sharp, and it drops off as it goes away. And, that would be the light, being offset. So, you get this sharp focus close up, but the focus of the shadow dissipates as it goes out. Very, very interesting detail in there. And there's the woman again, and the burger, and we've gone around and around. Anyway, shadow puppets, give it a shot. All right, our next style from summer camp is macrame. And so what macrame is, if you're not familiar, it was really popular in the, again, 70s and 80s. What it is it's a textile art form, similar to weaving, where you're using different knots and stuff to create, sometimes functional, sometimes decorative art forms like bracelets and pot hangers, like potted plant hangers. And the only difference is between weaving and this is it doesn't use a loom or a needle or anything like that. It's all knotted by hand. So let's check out what macrame does to us. It does not do a cheeseburger any favors. That is not appetizing at all. But it's macrame. Look at this, a forest. This is so cool. I mean, talk about fantasy and mixing this just weird environment with ropes and there's a lot going on in this image. There's the atmospheric perspective going backwards, but if you look at the very top, this is actually a set. So it's like a screen that's set up with an old school matte painting. That's where the old matte paintings used to be painted bright on canvas. I got to see some of those when I worked at Sony, and we got to go to the Paramount lot, and they have these huge matte paintings. I mean, like 4 stories tall, and they would put it behind people, and think of the old movies, like Bing Crosby, The White Christmas, where they would just do these massive back, and your character would be up close. So the way the camera works is, you have a narrower field here, but behind them, you have to make this massive thing because the further it gets away from the camera lens, the wider the angle of view is. Anyway, that's all. What am I doing? We're talking about macrame. All right. So, very cool. There's the forest, macrame, and here is a house. I don't know why that has anything to do with macrame. That looks bizarre. I mean, how creepy is that? A face in macrame, a bust. I guess I would call that a macrame bust. Impossible to create probably, but very cool. And the octopus. Wow, there's a lot of, it almost looks like JPEG artifacting, but I don't think it is. I think it was rendered like that because it's very smooth, and when it gets away, it's kind of like a moire pattern. Again, we see this in MidJourney every once in a while. Just weird patterning and digital artifacting. Skull. I mean, that's cool. Macrame and a skull, because you think fishing nets and pirates and I think that's a good mix. Why is my phone go? I bet that would, you could do some really, really cool stuff with that. And a tree. Again, I mean, just wild. Feel wild. I mean, if I was to make that in real life, you would probably make a foundation or a core with something pliable, like a coat hanger or some type of wire basing. A lot of times when you do sculpture, you put a wire base and then build the clay on top of it. I think that's how this probably was. Would have been made if it was real. So you build out the tree and wire and then cover it in macrame. That would take a lot of work. That's a lot of work. And the woman, I mean, very cool. It's combining lace with the macrame, and it's interesting. You get this definite, like, a creamy eggshell rope. Like, it's not pulling rope from like a climbing store. It's pulling a very specific, are they woolen rope textile? I don't know, but interesting with mixed with lace. Gives it a very cool look. Oh, and that's it. That's macrame. Anyway, throw that in your prompt. All right, here's one you gotta know. Maybe you don't. Maybe I'm just old. This is paper mache. This is, if I remember correctly, from my childhood. It's mixing glue and water. And then what we used to do was, or if this was correct, what we would do is mix glue and water mixture. And then you would take newspaper and kind of dunk it into the newspaper and then fit it over something. A lot of times we would use like a large balloon and then we would fit it over it. And then when the paper mache, when the glue dries, you could pop the balloon and then you have this round paper mache structure. And we would make those into masks that you could put over your head and scare people because it's creepy. It's creepy. Anyway, this rendering of the cheeseburger, this doesn't look like paper mache to me. This looks more like a painted wood carving. But it does have that fake faux look. Like you obviously know it's not a real cheeseburger. It's synthetic. This would be paper mache. This is a paper mache of a man. Very cool, very emotional. But also just kind of dark and weird. I like it. Motorcycle, that's cool. I mean, again, this is, turning your paper, your very pliable paper, because you can't use too thick a paper, into shapes that you've gathered. I don't know if you could actually create a motorcycle with paper mache, but pretty cool. That's why we have AI. Octopus. This looks awesome. Definitely just cool. And I love that it's shot on with a macro, or gives the effect of macro. Great interest in the image composition. Paper mache. See, this looks more plastery. I mean, that's another. I believe you could do plaster over paper mache. I believe some people were able to do that. So interesting. It's just very cool. It's a whole different look. It's a new look, and throw this into a very cool. Here's a tree in paper mache. It's a look that you just, if you're looking for something different in your renders, this is what you go for. Throw this in and see if you want that sense of the uncanny valley. Mix this into a render. Gonna get weird. Gonna get weird real quick. Look at that. That's cool. That is very cool. A woman in paper mache, and you could imagine seeing something like this in a gallery or something, and you really gotta sit back and think about the technique that was used. Of course, we're creating with AI, but now we're thinking about the processes and stuff to actually make these in real life. We don't really know how to apply AI yet, and yesterday Apple rebranded it as Apple Intelligence, but we don't know the effect that it's going to have, and very weird, like liminal spaces. I got into researching that and looking at it for my last video, and then I was really inspired to go out and shoot some liminal spaces, do some photography with it. Again, check the Discord, because I'll post them up there. Oh, where we go? Did I get to the end? I got to the end. All right. Paper mache. All right, here we go. So our next art style that we're going to take a look at is string art. And this is where you take different colors of strings and kind of pre-plan out. A lot of times it's attached to a flat board and you put nails in it, and then you connect the strings and create designs that way. Think of, some crazy detective tracking down a serial killer, and he's got his strings and nails connecting all his evidence and murder locations and maps and all the evidence, and he's connecting them with red strings. Anyway, there's an art form where you can use the string, it's a string art, and basically you can create some pretty intricate stuff by connecting colorful strings across a pattern of nails. So let's get into it. It's a very crafty, definitely fits in summer camp. Here is a man in the style, or maybe it's a woman. Which one was this? Is this a man or a woman? In the style of string art, but as you can see, it, the intricacy and colored, this would be a great image for like an IT professional because it almost looks like cables. Unlike macrame, this macrame doesn't use the nails. This does use the nail, and this uses a much finer string than what macrame might use. Here is a burger. It's a cheeseburger. The tomatoes look like they could be string art. The bun looks like macaroni, and now I'm hungry. And here, I don't think this is string art. This looks very, almost looks like pixel art, but I can't remember what this is called. This is where you punch the thread through and pull it back on a larger, basically you kind of have a drawing on a sheet of textile, and then you pull and stitch through to create an image on one side. But I wish I could remember what the name of that was. Nope, don't remember. I must have learned something new this week, and that just fell out of my brain. Okay, so there is a forest in the style of string art, but definitely get an interesting look. Here's a house. This absolutely 100%. That looks really cool. If I had this hanging in my house as kind of like a crafty art project, I would dread dusting that thing. I feel like it would just attract dust. You need like an air compressor to like clean that thing. But interesting. And the motorcycle. This is interesting because this kind of like blends string art with scribble art, but very cool and a look we have not seen before. So I'm pretty thrilled with that. Oh, the octopus. Look at that. I mean, the economy of stitching that it's representing is so cool. Just this cool design, but you look at these like suction cups on the tentacles, and it's just a circle outside of the linear path, but it adds so much mass to that look. Very cool. Very interesting. Very interesting. And the skull. Now, I don't think this is actually possible for the amount of strings that are in the are anchoring it on the sides, but it's almost like they're anchoring a netted version of the skull. The mechanics of it don't add up, but still cool, still very cool. And here's a trick. This almost looks like polygonal art. 80s polygonal art over stitching and tapestry. Just weird looks that you can get, and again, this stuff is, I bring this stuff up. I put it in the most simple prompt possible, but when you do it and you put it in a more robust prompt, who knows what kind of stuff you can get, and combine it with other styles and prompts and techniques and subjects, and you're going to get some wild stuff. Here's the woman in string art. Very cool. That's what I would imagine that string art looks like. And it kind of combines like the overlay of the string art with like a textile tapestry look underneath. And just very cool. And like it's got a purpose, like a meaning and a message to it. Oh, that's it. All right, string art. All right, thanks for spending time at AI Summer Camp this week. I hope you got some ideas, and I hope you make some cool stuff. If you do, put it up on our Discord channel. I want to see it. It's some cool stuff. As I say, I'm going to put up the liminal space photography that I was doing. It's just a couple of shots, but, really got me inspired. It was AI got me inspired to do this. Another thing I forgot to mention is Wednesday night I am going to be on a podcast, which is pretty cool, the Dempsey podcast, and going to be talking about AI and being an AI artist and all that fun stuff, how I use it, how everything. We're going to get into it. Besides that, subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment, start up a conversation, start up a revolution. I love when people comment and they get all pissy with me. The trolls. I put them in their place, though. They got nothing. All right. Until next week.